Welcome to the Candle Business Coach Podcast, a show about the craft of candle making and small business. I'm your host, Kirsty Allen, and I'm a candle maker, mum of three, and kindness advocator. Join me as I dive into all things candles and small business and deliver advice and tips to you in episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Are you on the list to get my daily motivation emails? Every day I'll send you a message that is designed to help keep you focused on taking action toward your goals. Sign up using the link in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by the membership for candle makers, the Candle Makers Collective. Becoming a member gives you access to fortnightly online group Q&A coaching sessions to support you, monthly online workshops and trainings to help you grow your business, plus frequent expert guest speakers to inspire and teach you. You'll also have access to an ever-growing resource library with templates, guides, planners, and ebooks. But my favorite aspect of the membership is our exclusive Facebook group for accountability, connection, and support. So if you're looking to take your candle business to the next level and learn more about the membership for candle makers, click the link in the show notes for the Candle Makers Collective. Welcome back to the podcast, my friend. Today we have the beautiful Kylie from Tiny Giraffe Art and Design to talk to us about, funnily enough, art and design when it comes to your candle business and also branding as well. So Kylie, would you like to say hello to listeners and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Kirst. Thanks for having me. I am based in Brizzy here in Queensland. I'm an artist and designer with about 20 years of experience. Actually, 2023 marks 20 years for me. So I'm pretty excited. I feel like I'm hitting my stride and I've moved around a bit in terms of career. So I started as a landscape architect, and that is where I got all of my graphic design skills from, all those boring reports and master plans I had to produce. And then along the way, I decided to create art for myself, for my own walls. And that has turned into what is now Tiny Giraffe, which is my own creative studio. And it just started as a passion project. I'm sure, like many of your listeners, creating their candles for fun or for themselves. And then it's kind of developed into a business, and the passion just sort of took over. And eventually I went part-time, and then I went full-time 2 years ago. So, yeah, amazing. That's a bit about me.
That's incredible. And congratulations on your 20-year anniversary.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot has changed in that time, but, you know, my love for art and design has not changed.
No, in fact, it's probably amplified and become even stronger as you become more comfortable with your own business and your own journey as well.
Exactly.
I love that. So I want to know, because I actually don't know the answer to this yet, but why Tiny Giraffe? Where does that name come from?
Oh, the name. So when I started making art, it came from a trip it was a trip to San Francisco where I fell in love with the city. Those places where you immediately just feel like home, and there's something about a space or a place that calls your soul or your spirit, and you just feel like you were meant to go there. You were meant to be there. I wanted to move there after I traveled there. I loved it so much. But it was that trip where I came home and I was like, I'd really love an artwork of San Fran for my wall. And I couldn't find one that I really loved. And so I decided to use my skills in graphic design to create a map, like a hand-drawn map. And all of my maps are drawn in Adobe Illustrator. So they're quite crisp and clean and beautiful organic lines. And that's where I started developing my line art style, creating these beautiful maps for my wall. And when I was thinking of a business name, Tiny Giraffe it's funny. I was thinking about the spirit of travel, and that was what inspired my artworks. And I kept thinking about all the travels I'd been on and what memorable moments came from those. And there was one memorable moment that from 2013, a few years after going to San Fran, I went to Hong Kong. And we were sitting in the Hong Kong airport. It was that final hurrah, like last drink at the airport. I had a cocktail, and in my cocktail came out this tiny giraffe. He was a little swizzle stick. He was bright yellow. I've got him here. I'll have to show you.
Yeah.
And his little head was popping up out of the cocktail. And I just remember thinking that is such a sweet little thing for the last moment in Hong Kong. So I took him home and he sat on my desk while I drew all my artworks. And that's how the name came to be.
I love that story. That is so good. And I've never heard of having a swizzle stick in a drink of
No.
like an animal before. That is so cool.
They're usually they're usually little umbrellas, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or
Or
I've never seen a
toothpicks
giraffe
with like
either.
olives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Totally meant to be.
Yeah.
That's
So
so
that's
good.
that's like it's a special, it's always nice I think, to tie a personal story into your brand if you're not using your own personal name. That was what I decided anyway.
Do you have many people ask you where the name comes from?
Yes, everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah. I think it's an
Oh,
unusual name, and I think it's not directly tied to what I do in a logical sense. So people are always curious, which is fun. I love to tell people. I never get tired of telling that story.
yeah. And plus then it stands out in a memory as a memory for the person that you share the story with. So it makes your brand a bit more memorable as well.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. I think people fall in love with the story and then the concept behind why I do what I do, and they really get why I do what I do.
Yes, which is
Yeah,
so important when it comes to branding, like you say, and storytelling and sharing what your mission of your business is. And this goes for obviously candle makers as well as any business, but sharing
exactly.
the why behind why you do what you do and weaving that into your story and into your social media content and your emails and sharing with your customers and potential customers. That's how people connect with you rather than here's my candle, buy it because it smells pretty, or here's my product, buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
How have you helped businesses with the design of their products?
I mean, there's a lot of different businesses out there with a lot of different products, but one thing that's for certain is that you have this unique opportunity and a blank canvas when you start a business to create something that isn't like the reflection of you, the essence of you, or what you stand for, what your values are. It can be anything really, but that's what I actually really enjoy the most, is helping people tell their story or share their values or create a mood around their products. So some of the people that I've helped, it's quite diverse. Yet to help a candle maker, which would be a dream, but I've worked with florists, I've worked with hotels, I've worked with Airbnb owners, homeware brands, massage therapists. I've worked with interior designers, life coaches, you name it. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. And most of the things that I've worked on have been branding, so logos, and I guess branding is quite a wide term, but ranges from everything from stationery to business cards to thank you notes, and all of the packaging. And those are the kind of things that I've been involved with so far, especially with my line art illustrations. So I think people fall in love with my style and then they see how it can be applied to their product. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's so important is if you're thinking of outsourcing design or branding to a professional or to an expert, you need to be able to connect in with their natural abilities and what they can bring to the table as well, rather than just looking on Google, finding the first person or going with the cheapest quote.
The cheapest option, yeah.
Yeah, you need to actually align yourself with the right people when you build your business. And that's just one of the important things about doing when it comes to branding.
Yes, and there's so many talented people out there, and everyone has their own unique style, their own unique spin on how they might interpret your brief to them. And that, even if you don't have a brief, how they might help you develop that. So it's very important to make sure that you not only love their style, but that you connect on a personal level, or that you believe in what they are creating and that you believe they're the best person to help you.
Yes, 100%. So when it comes to, say, a candle business, because this is the Candle Business Coach podcast, so we'll make it about candles.
Yeah, let's make it all about candles.
How important is branding and design when it comes to setting the tone?
I think, like, personally, obviously I'm biased. I'm going to say that it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, as you know, you don't need a logo to get started. There's a lot of things you don't need to get started and to be successful. But as you develop and as you go on your journey, I think it's extremely important that your branding and the look and feel and all of the things that are associated with your business evolve with you. And so, yes, I think it's very important. And the way to do that is to start where you're at and to focus on what you can afford at the time, and to focus on the things that matter. So for candles, maybe it's choosing the vessel that it comes in is a big part of it, or it's about thinking about what it actually says on the copy that's part of the beautiful sticker that's on your candle. Those are the things I think that count.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many, as you say, so many different aspects to what branding and design and how we can bring that into our business model and the way that we present our products overall. And
Yeah.
it does take thought. You need to spend time thinking about how you want your customer to perceive your products and how you want them to feel, because we want to
Exactly.
connect in with the emotions, because candles are an emotional purchase. It's not
Yeah.
just that, they're a luxury. You use them when you have guests over and you're having a dinner party, or if you're having a relaxing bath, or if you've just cleaned the house. Like, it connects in, weaves in the story of our lives. So if you can spend that time thinking about how you want your branding to look and how you want the design to be, if you spend that time up front, then you've got a foundation to work through and work towards for the rest of your business.
Yes, exactly. And on that point, candles are a very sensory experience. We're not always focused on smell. We're focused on visual and we're focused on touch. But the scent is so overlooked, I think. And that brings it back to when you're thinking about what's important in the design aspect, it's about thinking about that sensory experience for your customer. And actually, in design language, we call it a customer touch point. So where if you think about your customers and how they're buying your candles, where they're buying them, what is that customer journey like? What are the touch points where they come into contact with you or your brand or your candles? How do they first discover you? How do they feel when they see your branding, when they pick up the candle, when they smell it? It's all part of those customer touch points. So that's a big part, I think, of thinking when you sit down to think about what is important, thinking about how you want people to feel at every stage of that journey.
I love that. That is such a good way of explaining the different touch points, or the areas where the customer will come in contact with your candle or your products or your business or your social media or your email list, or however they're coming into contact with you. If you can make the focus about your customer and their experience and elevating their life with your products, rather than looking at it from the angle of, I want a sale, I want to make money in my business. Yes, we want to make money, but the focus and the value needs to be placed on the customer's experience.
Yes, because how they feel is where they'll spend their money. If you make them feel good, they'll want to spend it with you.
Absolutely. What tips would you have, or do you have, on getting started with designing candle logos and labels?
Well, I'm not a packaging expert, but I have done quite a few logos. I think before you start anything, obviously we've spoken about the research bit and thinking about those customer touch points. There's also, there's kind of also the dreaming part where you kind of, that's the fun bit, I think, where you get to dream about what it is that you would like to see out in the world. The research part is, keeping your eyes open on other products, and they might not necessarily be candles, and you don't necessarily need to look at what your competition is doing. You only need to go into Coles or Woolies and you'll see a whole host of beautiful products that could inspire you. Mm-hmm. And then it's about building your own brand. So it's a bit of a mix of the dreaming and the research, and then taking that in building is what is essential to you. And then once you're building a brand, the logo is one part, and it is a very important part, but it's just one part. And your branding might be made up of a whole range of things. So you might decide that you want some hand lettering as part of your logo. Is essentially usually made up of words and images. So it's usually a word-based piece and then an imagery, and that they can be, they have different words and ways of realigning those, whether that's in a rectangular format or a square format or a round format. You can use them interchangeably and in different settings, but essentially it's made up of those two things. But you might decide you want a font over a hand lettering, or you want the hand lettering over the font, and then you're looking at what supports. Once you've got your logo, you're looking at what supports that logo, whether it's illustration, whether there's little symbols, whether there's any art involved. And then, of course, your brand also entails your brand values. So what message are you sending alongside this logo and your illustrations or your art? What's the voice of your brand? So what tone are you setting? And what positioning? Are you high end? Are you low end? Are you in the middle somewhere? All of these can tell a story about your brand. And then, of course, the packaging. So, but I think to take it down to basics, if you think about what you actually need for your candle, there's a hierarchy of information that goes onto a product. So you've got, you know, when you look at most candles, they have their logo or business name quite prominently. Usually it's larger than anything else on the label.
Mm-hmm.
You've also got a product range. If it's part of a collection, you have a product name. You have the scent type, which is, what the beautiful deliciousness that makes it up that's attracting them. You've got a product size perhaps, or a volume. Ingredients are really important because people place a lot of value now on what goes into something, and is it natural, or is it, what is it that's going to benefit them in their home, and where is it made, or how is it made, and by who. So those are the kinds of things that I would focus on. You don't necessarily have to put all of them on your candle, and you might like to even add a little description, but mostly those are the kinds of things to consider.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of those things where some people put too much information on the labels and it can be quite confusing for the customer.
Or overwhelming. That's right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's worth considering and playing around with a few ideas. If you are designing your own logo, or if you are using an expert to help you, try and convey several ideas to see what works, see what looks best for you and what feels right for your brand message.
And if you're new, don't be afraid to test the waters. If you're setting up at a market stall, perhaps you could make 2 or 3 variations of the label and ask your customers, because they're right there. That's what I found to be the best part about selling at markets in particular, was that one-to-one feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask them, which label do you like the most? What is it about that candle that stands out to you over this one? Or, yeah, it's a great opportunity. Don't be afraid to have a play in the beginning and continue to play as you evolve. Nothing set in stone.
Yes.
You can always change things.
Yes, that's true. The process of evolving with your business is essential. And it means that as you learn more, you can implement new information and new knowledge into your business.
Yeah, exactly. And some things will become more important to you over time, I think, of what is important to convey and what isn't.
That's so true.
When you start your candle business, there are so many things to consider and research along the way, especially when it comes to choosing the right suppliers. Long Story Short provides all your design and printing needs, from your logo and branding to designing and printing your product labels. The quality is exceptional, the customer service is amazing, and prices are very reasonable. They're the only label company I recommend, so check out their website or send them an email today to get started. hello@longstoryshortdesign.com.au.
How can design contribute to capturing those emotions that we spoke about? How do we tap into customers and potential customers' emotions?
Well, I think colour has a huge part of it. Colour is often associated with feelings, and, it's obvious when you look at a lot of branding. Some, the bright reds and oranges of fast food, for example, that's, compared to the soft, maybe softer tones of a candle. Like when you look at different types of branding, you'll very quickly see, and it's kind of nice to have examples to look at, because when you look around at all the products on the shelves, you'll be able to tell how it makes you feel just by looking at it. A lot of skincare and candles and anything in that sort of luxury homeware space is often simple is best, and in terms of like layout and design, but also colors, the number of colors. So sometimes if you want your customer to feel like uplifted and vibrant, perhaps you use a lot of colors. If you want them to feel calm, perhaps you create a softer palette that's only a couple of colors. So color is a big one. And then, of course, I personally think the copy, like the words that you use when they pick up the candle, the words that you use can evoke a feeling. So set the scene for them, set the tone for them through the words you use. And maybe that's not always just on the product, but in the marketing materials around you. You don't need to necessarily have everything on the label, but words definitely tell a story.
Yes. And we mentioned how important storytelling is in weaving in your brand's mission and values into the marketing side of things, which is so important. But it's so good to know that you can incorporate different colors to evoke different emotions and different moods for your customers and potential customers. So I love that you brought that up. Are there any do's and don'ts when it comes to business branding for candles?
I'm not aware of any, although I would say if it's something that you're not confident about, don't put it on. Mostly, I feel like if you can feel confident when it comes to branding, if you can feel confident about what you're showcasing, that will help you to sell more. When you believe in what you're putting out into the world, even if it's not as designed as well as it could be, that will show more than anything. So, but I would just focus on what gives you confidence when you're setting out the layout or the design of the label, or even the layout of your candles on the stall or in the store. Have a think about what makes you feel good, because often your gut feeling is right.
Yes, 100%. Got to trust your intuition.
Yeah.
So for a business that is perhaps in its early days, what can they do from a design standpoint to stand out?
That's interesting. So I guess one thing I see a lot of, and this is just a pet peeve, but because I also have a photography background, is good photos is very helpful. Sometimes more important than the design, but I just feel having photos, and they don't need to be taken by a professional necessarily. We were just talking about this before we started. iPhones do take really good photos, especially on that portrait setting where it can blur the background a little bit. I think that good photos can make or break a product, especially on social media. If you're trying to share it there in person, it's a bit different, but that's one thing that I would consider.
Yes, absolutely. And we on the podcast we had a photographer come on and share some tips and tricks. Her name is Gemma.
Excellent.
Yeah, her name is Gemma Carr. So if anyone listening wants to go back to that episode and learn some photography tricks and tips on how to make the best of your photos for your social media and marketing, certainly check out that episode. But it's so interesting because naturally, being the candle business coach, I see a lot of different candle businesses, and you can tell which businesses quite quickly. I can tell quite quickly which businesses are investing in growing their business, whether it is getting professional photography or professional labels done. No, it's not necessary. It's not that you have to do it. But when you increase your branding efforts, it gives you more confidence to show up for your business as well. And I think when you're more confident in the photos that are on your social media, you're more confident with how you're more like you're happy with the look and the feel of your brand, then you show up in a different energy, and that is felt by your customers and potential customers. So it's important to think about, do I want to invest the time in creating my own branding and learning how to take the best photos, or do I outsource to a professional? And that will be different for every business and at different stages of your business as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think on the design side of things, as a new business, to stand out, it's important to have something that I think is the essence of you. So, there's a lot of brands out there that look the same, and it's almost as if they've taken cues from all the other brands on social media. I think if you want to stand out, it goes back to that dreaming part where you think about, yes, it's easy to research and see what everyone else is doing, but when you come back to yourself and you think about what it is that is important to you, and the story you want to tell, and the values behind you and your product, those are what can make you stand out. That can be what makes you memorable, and that can be through the design, that can be through the words, but usually it's a combination of all of those things.
I'm sitting here nodding, but the listeners obviously can't see that. It's true. It really is. And I love how you phrase that. I think that's really a succinct way of putting it.
Thank you.
How can we maintain consistency across the various platforms and channels when it comes to design and branding? Is it just a matter of having a logo or having the brand image and then using that across the different platforms?
In a way, yes. So if you have, again, it's about those touch points. So if you decide you want to be on Pinterest and on Instagram, or if you decide you want to be on Instagram and YouTube, carrying that color palette through everything can tie it together, especially if you have a brand color or colors that will help people immediately identify with you. Having your logo doesn't necessarily have to be repeated all the time, but having it show up every now and again helps reinforce that, especially if you're doing, say, YouTube videos. You can put your logo on your videos. In Instagram, you don't need to show your logo every single post. But when you're capturing different photos, you might see your brand in the background, or you might see complementary colors in the, say, for example, you did a photo shoot of your beautiful candles at the market, and in the background, you've got your own branding. All of those things help tie it together when you're looking at the imagery. And especially when you're thinking about photo shoots, I guess it comes back to, you can incorporate, if for you're really big on botanicals and you've got a particular plant or something that you use, you could even use that in your backdrop of your imagery to set the tone and the mood that carries across multiple things. But it's about using consistent fonts, using consistent tones in your imagery, using I guess it's about, when you've got that brand palette, you use it everywhere and you use it in different ways, but it all ties together. And that's what creates that consistency, no matter where you're showing up.
I love that. How can we incorporate art with candles?
There's a few ways. Obviously, on the label itself, I've seen some beautiful brands do illustrations alongside their fonts, their logo and the label, like the product name and things like that, and the description, whether that's a little illustration that sits alongside it, and perhaps that illustration tells the story of what the scent is. If it's Banksia leaves, or if it's a bush scent, or if it's something floral and you've got the floral illustration alongside it, that can be really beautiful. You can also incorporate something subtle into the background. So one thing that I do for customers is surface pattern design, which is the creating a beautiful pattern, a seamless pattern, repeating pattern that you can use in the background of just about anything. So it can sit in the background behind your text and on the label. It can sit onto packaging. It can sit on your website. And then, of course, you've got your packaging itself. So you can put the art into the packaging. And, of course, you can use it on your website, in your Instagram. I believe that when you've got those kind of additional bits and pieces, that's quite nice to share, interspersed with, like, to tell that story again of what it is that that beautiful scent is about, or the inspiration behind, or those kind of things.
It's so important having those foundations in place and really having the brand, like the color palette, as you say, and the different fonts and things that you want to have across all the different touch points, but having it in a position, or having it in a way that makes sense to you and doesn't overwhelm the customer. So doesn't
overwhelm the product too.
Yeah, exactly.
I have seen some examples where art can take over, and maybe it's not the most important piece on there, but if it's used well, it can really set you apart.
Yes.
Actually, one thing important. I did want to say about that is also your touch points that we spoke about earlier. For example, so I had a client who we did her logo and branding. She's actually an energy worker, author, and plant consultant, but she creates these beautiful products, little crystals with succulents growing in them. So we created, aside from her logo and branding, we created a little stationery range for her thank you cards. So that's another opportunity where you can incorporate art. But yeah, it's those touch points again.
It's about really creating just this beautiful holistic brand that really sums up what your mission is, what your products represent, who you are as a person, and bringing that to light to inspire and evoke emotions with your customers in a way that's authentic to you and feels right for you. And if you're standing in your own light and you're doing things that are in your own values and morals and in your own alignment, when you cast that out into the world, people will become magnetized and attracted to you and your products, rather than having to send cold DMs and trying to generate sales in a way that might not feel in alignment with who you are as a business owner.
That's beautifully put. Absolutely. Yeah, perfect.
So what advice would you give to, say, candle business owners seeking to work with a designer to bring their vision to life? What sort of tips or what sort of strategies should we use to make sure that what we have in our head can then come out through the design vision?
I think there's two elements to that. So the first one is being confident in who you are and what you want. And because the designer can only go on what you give them. So it's important to be true to who you are and know what you want for your brand. And that's where the dreaming part comes in. You're thinking about what you would love to see. If your wildest dreams could come true and you were, you've got everything in your head, if you could get that all out onto the page, it's definitely worth doing, because that's what a designer will need from you. And that's why they often will ask you questions or send you a questionnaire or have an online meeting with you so that they can really tease out all of that information that's stuck in your head. And that's basically what the briefing stage is. So it's about the having confidence in who you are and bringing that to the table, and then being confident in your choice of your designer to be able to take that and deliver it in their way that will bring what you really want to life.
Yes, and it's very much a collaborative effort as well. Like, you need to be able to voice or to write out what your vision is or what you think your vision might be, and then go back and forth with the designer to see and to really dial in how you want your brand and logo and labels to look. And that process should be fun. It should
That's the best bit.
yeah, it should really excite you and really make the whole process so enjoyable, even though yes, you're having to do the self-reflection, and yes, you have to go into your own mind and really work out what you want. And that can be confronting for some people, but it can also be quite enlightening for others as well. So have fun with the process. If you are at the beginning of your candle making journey and you're wanting to create your brand and your vision and your logos and your labels, have fun with it rather than feel like it's just another task on your to-do list.
Yes, exactly. And a good designer will also help you tease that out. So if you're not entirely sure, but you have some ideas, don't feel like you're not ready. You kind of just have to start where you're at, and that will evolve over time. But a good designer will help you tease that all out. And the more that you can, I feel that the more that you can be open with them, and that's why it's important to have a great relationship with them, the more that they will be an extension, as if they were your hand, and they're expressing it through, you're expressing yourself through them.
Absolutely. So tell me, where do you find artwork, or how do you create artwork to make your designs stand out from the rest?
As in, where do I find my inspiration?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, everywhere. I can't shut my brain off. I only have to go out into my back garden and I'll see a little plant and I'll be like, oh, I really want to draw that. And I can see exactly where I want to put it or what it should go on. I have the trouble of too many ideas. But for me, being in nature is a huge inspiration. Obviously, with Tiny Giraffe and the whole story of my brand being about the spirit of travel. For me, I'm most inspired when I'm away. I do get inspired at home as well, but I love to go on a little journey, even if that little journey is just a walk around my neighborhood. So for me, it's about going for walks, seeing the nature around me, and seeing what little special things I discover along the way.
That's beautiful. And I think we can all find inspiration that way as well. We might not necessarily be the most creative minded, but if we can get out in nature, take a different path, walk a different street, try something new in our life to energize us, I think that will help bring our visions to life as well.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners about branding or design or art?
I wanted to say something that you actually just already touched on as a final parting thought. And it really is what you said before, is to have fun with it. Honestly, I feel like the design and the art piece is the best part. Bringing something to life from your imagination or from your little seeds of ideas is the most fulfilling, joyful part. So please have fun with it. Don't, DM me if you want some inspiration. But yeah, just don't feel stuck in that part, because it's easy to do with a blank page in front of you, but I feel like that's the bit where you get to have the most fun. So be curious and stay open-minded and just enjoy it. Yeah, that's probably it.
I love that. I love stay curious, not only with your candle business, but with your life.
They bounce off each other. So
they certainly do.
They go hand in hand.
So, Kylie, we've come to one of my favorite parts of the podcast where I ask all my guests 3 questions specifically relating to candles.
Yeah.
So, question number 1, what is your favorite candle fragrance?
Oh, I thought that was what you were going to ask me. That's so tough. So, I have it here on my desk. It's the Peppermint Grove coconut and lychee.
Oh, that sounds good.
And it has the most beautiful
That's gorgeous.
ribbing on the glass jar.
Yeah.
It's for those, because you can't see it at home. It's
Sorry,
how would you
sorry.
describe that, Kirsty?
It looks like a stemless wine glass with vertical lines down the side, but it's like ridges.
Ridges, yeah. It's very beautiful.
It's
elongated.
Gorgeous. Yeah, really, really pretty. So coconut and lychee, that's your current favorite?
That's my current favorite.
Perfect. Question 2, what do you love about candles?
I have loved candles ever since I was little. And actually, funny story, I nearly burnt my bedroom down as a teenager because I lit a candle and then I sat it under a bookshelf and it was too close to the timber on the underside of the bookshelf. Yeah, that was a lucky save. What do I love? Is that what you asked me? What do I love most?
What do you love about candles?
For me, it's just about that opportunity to be present, because I feel like every time I light a candle, it reminds me of the here and now. And that's something I really struggle with in my day-to-day, is to be present. I'm thinking constantly about the future or sometimes about the past, and I think it's so important to be in the now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of the powerful things that candles can create, that atmosphere to allow you to feel comfortable being in the present and being in your own thoughts and just enjoying the moment. So, yeah, I certainly love candles as well, as you could probably imagine.
I imagine you're obsessed.
A little bit, yeah. And then the last question is, what is one piece of advice you'd like to give to candle makers?
Does it have to be art and design related?
It can be anything at all.
I just want you to know that you are so special in the world, and the world really does need candle makers. I think don't ever feel like, what you do is not important, because it's these little things that are the big things.
Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. That's
okay.
Kylie, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being on the podcast today and sharing your wisdom and knowledge when it comes to design and art. The listeners that would like to get in touch with you, where can we find you online?
So my website is www.tinygiraffe.co. You can also find me on Instagram at tinygiraffe.co. Those are the 2 main places that I hang out these days. But yeah, come say hello. If you've got any questions, slide into my DMs. I'm happy to answer if you're stuck. So
perfect. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Kirsty. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks everyone for listening today. I hope this episode added value to your candle making journey. Check out the show notes for all the links mentioned throughout today's show, and please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks again for listening. Have a beautiful day.